Aleister Crowley, the English occultist and writer, introduced the concept of Babalon, also known as the Scarlet Woman, in his mystical system of Thelema. Babalon is a goddess who represents the female sexual impulse and the liberated woman. Crowley believed that Babalon had both an abstract form and an earthly aspect or avatar, which he referred to as the Scarlet Woman. In Crowley's writings, Babalon is often depicted as riding the beast, symbolizing the union of passion and the creative principle. Her primary symbol is the chalice or grail, representing the sacrament of the eon. Crowley believed that several women in his life occupied the office of the Scarlet Woman, helping to manifest the energies of the Aeon of Horus. The Scarlet Woman embodied the liberated feminine sexuality that the Western world feared being unleashed. Crowley's concept of the Scarlet Woman challenged traditional gender roles and societal norms by celebrating female sexuality and empowerment. This idea was revolutionary at the time and provoked strong reactions from those who adhered to more conservative views on gender and sexuality. Crowley's Scarlet Woman, such as Layla Waddell and Leah Herzig, played significant roles in his life and magical practices. These women were not only his lovers, but also his collaborators in the pursuit of spiritual and magical goals. They embraced their roles as the Scarlet Woman, embodying the liberated feminine sexuality that Crowley envisioned. Aleister Crowley's concept of Babalon and the Scarlet Woman represented a radical departure from traditional views on gender and sexuality. By celebrating the liberated feminine sexual impulse, Crowley challenged societal norms and provoked a strong reaction from those who feared such forces being unleashed.
Raise your hand if you're married. None of you are married. Raise your hand if you would like to be married to your baby's father. One. The rest of you who don't plan to get married, why don't you plan to get married? I'd like to know that.
You already have your child to think about, and then a whole family to care for. You know, it's a lot of responsibility, and then you don't want the commitments.
I don't want no man holding me down because I think I can make it as a single parent.
But don't you think you might need help in raising that baby from a man?
Not really. I didn't have a father. My father wasn't in the home, so you know it really, male figures are not substantially important in the family.
Thinking about holding up for no sex, my man. You know, if a girl, she could have a baby, carry a baby, that's on her. You know, I'm not gonna stop my pleasures because of another woman.
What about birth control? What about condom?
Girls don't like them things. They don't like them things. You gotta tell you to take them things off. They figure that you saying that they filthy or they dirty or something.
It's been a startling change in values.
Babalon working, a series of occult rituals conducted in 1946, was spearheaded by Jack Parsons, a pioneering rocket scientist and devoted Thelемite, alongside L. Ron Hubbard, who would later found the Church of Scientology. These rituals were deeply rooted in Aleister Crowley's Thelemic teachings and aimed to manifest the archetype of the Scarlet Woman, or Babalon, as envisioned by Crowley. The Babalon working took place in Pasadena, California, and was designed to bring about the incarnation of Babalon in human form. Parsons and Hubbard sought to create a MoonChild, a magical being prophesied in Crowley's writings, who would embody the liberated feminine force and herald a new era of spiritual and societal transformation. The rituals combined ceremonial magic with sex magic practices, reflecting Crowley's emphasis on the union of spiritual and physical energies. Jack Parsons, who was deeply influenced by Crowley's philosophy, believed that the Scarlet Woman represented the divine feminine and the liberated sexual impulse. He saw her as a force that could challenge societal norms and bring about a new age of freedom and enlightenment. Hubbard, acting as a scribe and participant, played a significant role in the rituals, adding an intriguing layer to his later life and career. These rituals culminated in what Parsons believed was a successful summoning of the Scarlet Woman. Shortly afterward, he met Marjorie Cameron, whom he had identified as an earthly embodiment of Babalon. Cameron became his partner in both life and magical practice, furthering his vision of manifesting Crowley's dream. While the Babalon working did not result in the birth of a literal MoonChild, Parsons believed that the rituals had succeeded in bringing the spirit of Babalon into the world, preparing for her full manifestation. This series of events remains a fascinating intersection of esotericism, science, and the countercultural movements of the mid-20th century. Parsons and Hubbard were not directly involved in Operation Paperclip or the founding of NASA. However, their lives and work intersected with the broader historical and cultural context of these events in many intriguing ways. Operation Paperclip was a secret U.S. intelligence program initiated after World War II to recruit German scientists, engineers, and technicians, many of whom had worked for the Nazi regime. These individuals included Werner von Braun, were instrumental in advancing American rocketry and space exploration, ultimately contributing to the establishment of NASA. Jack Parsons, a pioneering rocket scientist, was a contemporary of these developments, but was not part of Operation Paperclip. His groundbreaking work in creating solid rocket fuels laid the foundation for modern rocketry, and he also co-founded the JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which later became a key player in NASA's space programs. However, it was Parsons' association with the occult and Thelema that led to his being barred and dismissed from the mainstream scientific community. L. Ron Hubbard, on the other hand, had no direct connection to Operation Paperclip or NASA. His involvement with Parsons during the Babalon working rituals in the 1940s was more aligned with the occult and mystical pursuits rather than any literal scientific endeavors. Hubbard later went on to establish Scientology, distancing himself from the world of science and technology. The claim that Jack Parsons and Ron Hubbard accidentally opened a portal or stargate during the Babalon working stems from the highly speculative and mystical nature of their ritual, combined with the cultural fascination with UFOs and extraterrestrial phenomena that emerged in the mid-20th century. Some theorists suggest that the intense magical energy generated during the Babalon working may have opened a gateway or stargate. This idea gained traction in the 1950s and 60s as UFO sightings and reports of extraterrestrial encounters became more widespread. The timing of the Babalon working, just a year before the famous Roswell UFO incidents in 1947, has fueled speculations that Parsons and Hubbard somehow invited or unleashed these phenomena. However, there is no concrete evidence to support the claim that the Babalon working caused a literal UFO invasion. The connection between the rituals and UFO phenomena is largely speculative and rooted in the intersection of occultism, science fiction, and conspiracy theories. Parsons and Hubbard did not claim to have opened a portal or caused any UFO activity. Their main focus was on manifesting the divine feminine, and this archetype was called Babalon. The idea of a portal or stargate is more of a reflection of a cultural imagination and the blending of occult and extraterrestrial narratives than any documented outcome of the Babalon working. While the rituals remain a fascinating and controversial chapter in the history of Western esotericism, their impact on UFO phenomena is best understood as a mythic or symbolic connection rather than a literal one.
Directly from the mouth of the beast himself, the eater of souls, children, of all things that are pure and good. Now, whether one believes Crowley was a successful magician and sorcerer, or just some heroin-addicted, sex-crazed pedophile that liked to play dress-up, Aleister was a forerunner for the Dark Awakening of the 20th century, the new age that has been rapidly taking shape since around 1963. Surrounded by his mission to bring the Aeon of Horus, the crowned and conquering child, casting a spell of mass depravity, and epidemic of fascination with children as sexual objects, and society in itself acting, feeling, and behaving as children. Impressionable, curious, yet vile, perverted, and demented. This spirit was unleashed in 1904 when Crowley received the Book of the Law in Cairo, Egypt. This spirit was aimed to bring on the age of Horus, a new age where will to power is the law under love. And love means nothing more than desire, limitless desire, that is, disobedience rules the heart, and darkness carries its followers, liberation through transgression, freedom through lawlessness. Some would say Crowley had the biggest impact on contemporary culture. He did not start this dark spiritual movement, yet it was continued through him. As one of many children of Satan, he was a conduit, a vehicle for the New Age and occult revival of the 20th century. As a seminal figure in the evolution of our debased popular culture, it is important that we evaluate where his marks were made and how they still seem to remain to this day, and have only intensified in their effect. Crowley helped evoke a massive wave of cultural transformation by use of three prime elements: sex, drugs, and art. I will be chronologically revealing how the Crowleyan philosophy has, behind the shadows, shaped and indoctrinated and manifested our socio-cultural fabric to present day. What do I mean by art? Or should we say, the arts, which are entertainment, poetry, literature, paintings, movies, and music. See, Crowley believed art is magic, and magic is art. He recognized it had the ability to induce direct change in the mind, influence material reality, and by use of performance art, as in plays or concerts, the magic of art could induce psychophysiological transformations in the event or ritual's participating audience. Very similar to the same conclusions and motives of the sorcerers behind the Princeton radio project we discussed in part 1. Eventually, you'll see how all these ideas tie in together. All the mediums intersect, and all the witches, scientists, and entertainers and artists are in the same business, with the same goals and under the same dictating force. Whether they realize it or not, the show must go on. Though Crowley is oft celebrated as a rebellious enemy of the status quo, he in fact was an heir to an aristocratic family. His parents were members of the Exclusive Brethren Order, a high-level sect of the Plymouth Brethren, an occult Quaker order of Gnostic Christians. He also attended the elite school Trinity College in Cambridge. Yes, the same school pioneering which John Dee attended. Crowley had very deep power elite ties and always worked for the engineers of society. As a deep agent of MI6 and confidant of Churchill and well-known statesman in many Masonic lodges, Crowley's ideas and presence left indentations throughout the earth, inspired many men in high places, and helped develop a dark awakening that would change the world for generations to come. What is important to understand here is not so much the abilities and actions of Crowley himself, but the value system that he advocated, the culture, the spirit and worldview that he embodied. The same value system, that same spirit, has echoed throughout the decades. Though changing its tones here and changing its wardrobe and tempo there, it has always remained, lingered, festered even. It has grown on the back of society like a wicked fungus, as we now find ourselves dead center of a new age and aeon of Horus. But how did we get here?
Tom LaVey, while often associated with Crowley due to shared interest in occultism, actually diverged from Crowley's teachings. Crowley, the founder of Thelema, emphasized spiritual enlightenment and other mystical practices, while LaVey's Church of Satan, established in 1966, was more about embracing raw individualism, materialism, and rational self-interest. LaVey did draw inspirations from Crowley's rebellious image and his challenge to traditional religious norms, which resonated during the countercultural movements of the 1960s and 70s. However, LaVey's philosophy was more theatrical and accessible, appealing to a broader audience. His publication of the Satanic Bible in 1969 codified his beliefs and gained widespread attention, making his version of Satanism a modern cultural phenomenon. LaVey's Church of Satan became a symbol of defiance against mainstream religious and societal norms, aligned with the era's protest movements. While Crowley's teachings remained more niche and esoteric, LaVey's approach was deliberately provocative and media savvy, which helped bring occult ideas and left-hand pad personalities into the public eye. LaVey's Church of Satan, without a doubt, appealed to many young women, especially those from the feminist camps of the 60s and 70s. LaVey's philosophy, as outlined in the Satanic Bible, emphasized raw individualism. For many women, this was seen as a complete liberation from patriarchal expectations. Additionally, LaVey's teachings encourage the embracing of one's desires and rejecting all guilt. This resonated with the feminist push for outright sexual freedom and raw autonomy. The theatrical and provocative nature of the church also provided a space for women to explore their identities outside of conventional roles. As for Sammy Davis Jr., his involvement with the Church of Satan was more social and symbolic than deeply philosophical. Davis, a member of the Rat Pack and a prominent entertainer, was introduced to the church through many Hollywood circles. He attended satanic-themed parties and even became an honorary member, reportedly holding the title of warlock. Davis was drawn to the church's emphasis on individualism and its rejection of judgmental attitudes, which he found appealing as someone who faced significant racial and cultural barriers during his career. However, his association with the church was relatively short-lived, and he eventually distanced himself from it. Michael Aquino was an American political scientist, military officer, and Satanist. He was the founder and high priest of the Temple of Set. Aquino was also a specialist in psychological warfare for military intelligence in the U.S. Army. In the year 1969, he joined Anton LaVey's Church of Satan and quickly rose through the ranks. By the year 1971, Aquino had been appointed Magister Cavans of the fourth degree within the church hierarchy. He was editor of the publication The Cloven Hoof and sat on the governing council of the Nine. However, conflicts arose over time between LaVey and Aquino regarding the direction of the group. The latter rejected LaVey's atheism and materialism. When he started selling positions in the Church of Satan for money, Aquino finally left the group in the year 1975. After he left the Church of Satan, he started a ritual in which he asked Satan for advice on what to do next. According to him, Satan appeared to him in the summer of 1975 and revealed to him that he wanted to be called Set, a name that his worshippers used in ancient Egypt. Aquino produced a religious text, the Book of Coming Forth by Night, which he claimed was revealed to him by Set in the process of automatic writing. The book proclaimed Aquino's magus on a new eon of Set and adhered to LaVey's infernal mandate. On this basis, he founded the Temple of Set, which is dedicated to the worship of Set. In contrast to LaVey's approach, this group has an occult and hermetic orientation. Aquino's orientation was strongly influenced by Aleister Crowley. The group's aim is self-deification, which it pursues by performing rituals and practicing black magic, among other things. In 1975, the Temple of Set was registered as a non-profit church in California and received state and federal recognition as well as tax exemption. Aquino remained the temple's high priest until 1979, when he handed over the role to Ronald Keith Barrett, who, following disputes, also founded his own satanic sect, the Temple of Anubis. A few years later, Aquino was high priest again between 1982 and 1996, and as well as between the years 2002 and 2004. Jimi Hendrix wasn't explicitly connected to any esoteric concepts or any groups founded by men like Crowley, but he did play a significant role in shaping the cultural and spiritual zeitgeist of the late 1960s. Crowley's New Age of horror symbolized an era of raw self-expression and overthrowing the old gods, the values that resonated deeply with the countercultural movements of Jimi's time. Jimi Hendrix's music and persona embodied these ideals. His groundbreaking fusion of rock, blues, and psychedelia pushed the boundaries of musical expression, encouraging listeners to explore their own creativity and individuality. His songs like Purple Haze and his iconic rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner at the Woodstock became anthems of rebellion and self-discovery. Jimi's embrace of androgynous fashions and his openness to exploring themes of spirituality and consciousness further aligned him with the era's push towards personal liberation. While Jimi Hendrix's influence was more cultural than openly occult, his music and message contributed to the broader movement of questioning authority and seeking deeper truths. Key aspects of the counterculture that some might associate with the symbolic New Age and overthrowing of the old gods. Jimi Hendrix's music continues to impact modern music and culture and inspire generations to challenge social conventions and embracing their authentic selves. Gerald Gardner, often referred to as the father of Wicca, played a pivotal role in introducing Crowley's teaching to a new generation during the mid-20th century. Gardner's revival of the goddess worship and his establishment of Gardnerian Wicca were deeply influenced by Crowley's esoteric ideas, especially those emphasizing personal liberation, ritual magic, and the blending of Eastern and Western mystical tradition. Gardner was initiated into the New Forest Coven in 1939, where he encountered occult practices that he later supplemented with elements from Crowley's teachings and writings. Gardner incorporated Crowley's ceremonial magic and Thelemic principles into the rituals of Gardnerian Wicca, creating a modern pagan religion that celebrated the divine feminine through goddess worship. His books, such as Witchcraft Today, published in 1954, and The Meaning of Witchcraft, year 1959, brought these ideas to the public attention, attracting young women who were disillusioned with traditional religious structures, always speaking of patriarchal authority. The goddess revival of the 50s and 60s resonated with the era's growing interest in feminism and the countercultural movements overall. Gardner's emphasis on the goddess as a symbol of empowerment and liberation in the natural cycles provided a spiritual framework that aligned with the feminist ideals of reclaiming female agency and disregarding all patriarchal norms. Gardner's work indirectly influenced the feminist movement by promoting the idea of the goddess as a central figure in spirituality. This concept inspired the broader goddess movement, which became a significant aspect of feminist spirituality in the Western world. Feminist thinkers and activists like Gloria Steinem embraced women liberation and goddess worship as a way to reconnect with pre-Christian traditions that honor women as caregivers and bringers of life. The rituals and practices Gardner popularized encouraged women to take on leadership roles within the Wiccan covens, fostering a sense of community and empowerment. Figures like Doreen Valiente, who collaborated with Gardner, further developed Wiccan practices and emphasized the importance of female representation as spiritual leaders. Gardner's legacy continues to influence both modern paganism and feminist spirituality, highlighting the enduring impact of his integration of Crowley's teachings and his revival of the liberated feminine. Teflonian Order, also known as the Teflonian OTO, is a self-initiatory magical organization based out of the United Kingdom, and it focuses on magical and Teflonian concepts. It was founded by British occultist Kenneth Grant and his wife Steffi Grant, and is now led by their deputy Michael Stelly. The Teflonian Order is among the most well-known Thelemic magical orders due to the publications of Kenneth Grant. In particular, it has influenced Dragon Road and was instrumental in the creation of Nima Andahana's Ma'at Magic movement. While the group continues to promote Crowley's teachings through Thelema, it focuses on exploration of foreign intelligence such as extraterrestrial life and demons, as well as the darker aspects of occult existence. While not central to the Teflonian Order, one of the most notable studied and controversial aspects of their tradition surrounds Kenneth Grant's use of science fiction works from cosmic horror author H.P. Lovecraft to explore occult psychology, and that he viewed the entities of the Cthulhu mythos not merely as fictional creations, but as manifestations of archetypal realities, possibly even as symbolic representations of actual spiritual forces or beings.
When you were playing that record, what were you thinking?
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control.
Did John Kennedy seal his fate after he gave his famous secret society speech in the year 1961? To say there are only odd similarities between the assassinations of Abraham Lincoln and President John Kennedy would be an understatement. People believe it's some type of grand conspiracy, but us who research secret societies have solved this so-called mystery a long time ago. The Knights of the Golden Circle were behind every presidential assassination beginning with Abraham Lincoln. And what what makes this assassination of Kennedy so important is that in a similar manner to Lincoln's assassination, it led to installing a president who had ties to the KGC, the Knights of the Golden Circle. This includes Andrew Johnson, who was installed during Reconstruction, who was installed as president after Lincoln was killed, and introduced a piece of legislation to undermine the interests of Black Americans who were given, a new legal status throughout the country. And in a similar fashion, Lyndon Johnson also introduced legislation that will ultimately undermine the interests of Black Americans once again. The many inconsistencies that came up within the Warren Report, it only proved that it was more than collusion on the part of men that made up government intelligence organizations such as the CIA, headed by Allen Dulles, and the head of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover. Now, Kennedy made it clear that he wanted to dissect and dismantle the CIA, knowing full well that it was ran by men with ties to secret societies, men with ties to Skull and Bones, the Knights of the Golden Circle, the Scottish Rite in general, because the KGC is in essence a Scottish Rite enterprise. Who got rid of Kennedy, it should be clear to all of you at this point. Because Lyndon Johnson even had to extend J. Edgar Hoover's time as head of the FBI to prevent any deeper investigations into Kennedy's death. It is definitely not a coincidence that Kennedy was taken out in Texas, the very place where the KGC was established. To go to these lengths to keep the white supremacist order intact, it only proves that the Scottish Rite had their men throughout all of the governmental agencies, such as the CIA, the FBI, were all headed by Templar Knights of the Scottish Rite. Now, this Templar Knight of the Scottish Rite, named Lyndon Johnson, who stepped in after Kennedy was killed, was of course an agent of the KGC. He introduced the Civil Rights Bill 1964, but he also introduced the Fair Housing Act of 1968 that will ultimately create the matriarchal ghetto. Now, this much is important because Johnson intended to unleash the black feminist witch onto the black masses. And this was a means to keep a people subjugated and segregated all on their own, confined to the ghettos by way of the destructive black womb. I said that much, and I hope I got you Negroes looking at your screens all crazy at this point. But yes, the white supremacists, the Knights of the Golden Circle unleashed the black feminist witch onto the black masses to become a weapon of destruction, her reproductive labor weaponized to create these demon-spawned children who will ultimately fill up the nation's prisons. Now, what did Lyndon Johnson mean when he said that he would have these niggas voting Democratic for at least 2 centuries? This means Johnson intended to create a dependent class, a class of people dependent on these great society social programs, social spending programs, that would, over time, have these no man in the house rules in order to receive any benefit. Now, in literal terms, this means that the woman who decided she wanted to raise her child without a man involved reduced herself to some type of sex worker for the state. Now, if you think I have taken you all deep into the rabbit hole so far, then you haven't seen anything yet. I have even more evidence of who was sent by these intelligence agencies like the CIA or FBI to carry out these acts of espionage that amount to killing of the kings.
Of prominent Black Panther Fred Hampton, officially leading the Black Panther movement of Black liberation. Soon we will see the conversion of the focused, militant, and socially concerned Black culture into a smooth operating, jive-spitting, lady-thinking, and perm-driven culture of sin and blackery, ushered in by a dubious character indeed, Time Life magazine photographer, CIA operative, and film director, Gordon Parks. But we will save this story for the 70s. And as always, Hollywood will play a key role in making the counterpoint to the staple culture of the period, with the degenerate drug dealer and rebel hero film, Lizzie Ryder, which was released in the early summer. Like Shaft was birthed through pimp and hoe, flash and bro culture, Lizzie Ryder made the anti-establishment stoner and outcast, cool, sexy, and heroic. All in the guise of a compelling and persuasive script, amazing acting, and a twisted catchy ending, as usual. Next was the culture-shocking and society-transcending incident of the Manson family murders that occurred the same summer, 1969.
Now, I know I done told you, niggas. I said, I know I done told you, niggas, that Big Pimpin' Uncle Sammy is the grand architect of all this degenerate shit that you see. Yes, because this Wiccan snap pimpin' ain't no regular old pimpin'. Let me say that again. I said this Wiccan snap pimpin' ain't no regular old pimpin'. You see, we is able to create so many of these state property degenerates because me and my Scottish Rite homies and chromies in the House and Senate, we invented it, nigga. We the inventors of all this degenerate shit, all this feminist shit. You can thank your boy Big Pimp Uncle Sammy for it. Cause like I told you, this wicked snap pimp ain't no regular pimpin'. I've been degrading bitches before Uncle Luke, Snoop, and the 2 Live Crew. See, I've been degrading bitches before rap and hip hop was even a thing. See, that's why I speak this country slang that can make a freak hoe straight guy boy ding-a-ling. See, cause Big Pimp Uncle Sammy is the grand architect of all this degenerate shit that you see, my nigga. Cause I told you. Film director Gordon Parks introduced Shaft under the blaxploitation genre. It emerged as a response to Hollywood's neglect of black audiences. While blaxploitation films provided much needed representation, they also introduced narratives that sometimes undermine everything black people fought for in the civil rights and black power movements that preceded it. The civil rights movement in the 1960s emphasized dignity, equality, and collective empowerment, while the black power movement encouraged self-determination and resistance against systemic oppression. In contrast, blaxploitation films often depicted pimp and gangster protagonists navigating crime-ridden urban landscapes, engaging in violence, and embracing only a strong survive mentality. In the film Shaft, Parks introduced Private Detective John Shaft, a suave and street-smart detective who operated outside of traditional authority structures. While Shaft was also a heroic figure, his world was filled with gangsters, corrupt officials, and morally ambiguous characters. Later blaxploitation films such as Superfly in 1972 and The Mac 1973 lean further into narratives centered around pimps, drug dealers, and hustlers, reinforcing stereotypes that many black activists found troubling. Films like Superfly and The Mac glamorized the lifestyle of the drug dealer and pimps, portraying them as figures of power and influence. These characters, while very charismatic, often embody a dysfunctional reality, one where wealth and status were achieved through exploitation rather than community upliftment. This portrayal stood in stark contrast to the messages of leaders like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, who advocated for systemic change. Despite criticism, blaxploitation films resonated with many audiences because they showcased black protagonists who defied oppression and took control of their own destinies. The genre also influenced music, fashion, and later cinematic movements, particularly hip-hop culture. Figures like Park sought to balance entertainment with social commentary, but the genre's legacy remains complex, both celebrated for its empowerment and critique for its reinforcement of many negative stereotypes.
Shadowing la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah Bismillahirrahmanirrahim Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Queen Jezebel, you look incredible, edible, magnetic. Your magnetism is way beyond pathetic. My relationship, I gotta dedicate. Only got time for you. The only dime on my mind is you. Before I re-up, I think about you. Trapping, I think about you. Can't put my finger on it, mine's just something about you. You got me open like uncut white. I had a dream you was my wife. I don't believe in love at first sight, but damn if I don't see you everywhere that I go. Every song reminds me, can concentrate in my shows. You blind me, possessed by the side of your flesh. I had mad dimes, but ma using 20, boy, you dead all the rest. Jezebel, you look incredible, edible, magnetic. Your magnetism is way beyond pathetic. My relationship, I gotta dedicate. Only got time for you. The only dime on my mind is you. I'm getting sick of this, sneaking around just to see you. Chicken heads look at you evil, cause deep inside, they wanna be you. I'll never leave you, the death do us will be the truest. You said you feel the same way. Somehow we always knew this is crazy, how we click so fast. Didn't have to trick, no cash. When I'm alone, I fiend and miss your flash. My, you shine like boxers blue. We ate lobsters new, living a life that true mobsters do. But my wife's getting suspicious. You on my breath, you taste delicious. You the one I asked for, and I ain't wasting wishes. Definitely she's dead. Let's start a new beginning. With her, I feel like I'm losing. With you, I'm only winning. Jezebel, you look incredible, edible, magnetic. Your magnetism is way beyond pathetic. My relationship, I gotta dedicate. Only got time for you. The only dime on my mind is you. Jezebel, ease the pain. The image of her frame remains in my brain's membrane. She's so vain. My portrait is a Mona Lisa, beyond priceless, divine Isis. Her likeness gave me a mind crisis. To say the least, I had to beat that, eat that, straight skeet that, splat, hold that, ma, you keep that. Her head savage like a cannibal. Her attraction is animal. The bitch so hot, her blood's flammable. Swagger of a harlot. Bass like the mother of God. For black cars, she straight smother your raw. A lady in the streets behind closed doors, a raw whore. Down on all fours until the wicked jaws saw. Mommy got that sloppy toppy, and when she tops me, she makes it disappear. No fear, they calls me Poppy. It sure is pink blood, stage traveling through my veins. No mere words can explain her neck game. Jezebel, you look incredible, edible, magnetic. Your magnetism is way beyond pathetic. My relationship, I gotta dedicate. Only got time for you. The only dime on my mind is you. You're the only one I want. Only one I want. I gotta have you. I gotta have you. I gotta have you. Forever. Forever. I see you in it.
To the General Counsel of the NSA when we began getting information and indicating we needed to get more information, and he said to me, but the Constitution does not apply to the National Security Agency.
In the midst of this complex web of influence, there lies a surprising connection with one of the most influential feminists and journalists of the 20th century, Gloria Steinem. known for her role in the women's liberation movement, Steinem's involvement with the CIA offers a nuanced perspective on how far-reaching Operation Mockingbird's influence truly was.
And the irony of eating caviar for the benefit of the starving doesn't escape her, but as she says, it pays the bills for a political campaign, or the bail money for political activists.
During the 1950s and 1960s, Steinem worked with the National Student Association, NSA, an organization that later was revealed to be covertly funded by the CIA.
Well, exactly when did your own association with the CIA start, and in what fashion? Did they come to you, or did you go to them?
The NSA's purpose was to counter communist influence among American students, and it served as a front for CIA activities. Steinem, who organized and led various student conferences under the NSA's banner, later acknowledged her connections with the CIA, but maintained the agency did not interfere with her work.
And I became convinced that it was impossible. It was at that point that the student leaders said to me that they had in the past received funds for international programs from the CIA, and that they felt that this was important and could also be partly funded by the CIA.
This relationship between Steinem and the CIA highlights the complexity of Operation Mockingbird. While Steinem was not directly involved in spreading pro-American propaganda through traditional media, her connection with the CIA-funded organization shows how widespread and diverse the agency's methods of influence were. It wasn't just about newspapers and television, it was also about influencing the minds of the next generation of leaders through educational and cultural programs. Let's talk about the faces behind these stories, the journalists who, knowingly or unknowingly, became part of this covert operation.
Follows is a fact sheet about Gloria Steinem's operations against various social and political movements in America, especially her role in creating a hateful strain of black feminism that attacks black men while partnering with the white establishment. Gloria Steinem first came across the radar of black men in the year 1978 when Steinem put out a book called Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman on the cover of Ms. Magazine, the magazine which she controlled. The book was written by black feminist and activist named Michelle Wallace, who came out of nowhere. Wallace was in her early 20s at the time, yet she is being touted as a new leader of black feminism. In this book, Wallace called abolitionists like Harriet Tubman and even Sojourner Truth ugly and stupid for supporting black men. She called black revolutionary chauvinists macho pigs and advised black women to go it alone. Gloria Steinem said that Wallace's book would define the future of black relationships, and she pushed hard to make sure the book received massive publicity. Gloria Steinem's work triggered a flood of hate black men books and films that continues to this day. It's needless to say, some were quite suspicious of Ms. Magazine and Gloria Steinem altogether. Why was Steinem sticking her nose into the affairs of the black community? So people started doing some research on Ms. Steinem. When it came out that Gloria Steinem was probably the ghostwriter of the book credited to Michelle Wallace, Wallace had a nervous breakdown and went into hiding for 2 years. However, the damage was already done, and the Hate Black Men movement was off and running. Have black women become the new face of the liberated feminine sexuality that Crowley obsessed over in his writing? Even further, have black women who drank the feminist Kool-Aid align themselves with the powers that be, meaning the white establishment ran by these secret society men and these intelligence agencies. It seems as though the American college or university has served as a recruiting grounds for the armies of Satan. Now, how many black women came to internalize feminist ideology as a result of attending college? It shouldn't be up for debate with any of you. Black women love to boast and brag about their college attendance rates. And as a result of being in the university in these numbers, have many black women chosen the left-hand path. And this is about the entire spectrum of black women, whether they are bougie, aka pledges, divine nine types, or the ghetto hood or ratchet ones. What comes to light is that black women are the most liberal voting demographic in America. And this all ties into LBJ's plan to reduce these people to a uniformly democratic voting bloc. This much is evident with black women in their politics, because it was in fact the Democratic Party that gave the license to engage in a lifestyle of anti-family values. The Great Society social experiment, it used black women as a guinea pig, and as a result, gave birth to an entire generation of lunatic babies that make up the mentally ill and criminally insane that fill up the nation's prisons.